Now, what's happening at the moment is the Earth is going through a major change. And the only way to get this change done effectively is to basically let the whole thing crash and start again. If that makes sense.
Yep.
So instead of trying to correct things now, which simply hasn't worked over the centuries, they're going to let things crash.
It's quite interesting what you've been sharing. So I thought maybe it's something the rest of the world needs to hear about.
Okay. Yeah, the world does need to hear about it. The problem is getting it out there. There's so many barriers. There's an awful lot of ego out there. There's a lot of jealousy. You do posts on Facebook groups, and they don't want you to put your website there in case they lose people. But most of all, most of it is too hard for people to believe. If you tell them you've been 80,000 years in the future and talk to 20 aliens at once, it's like, wow, we can't believe that. You've got to do one step of the ladder at a time. And what's very frustrating is, for the last couple of years, my daughter and I have been channeling every day about the change of the Earth that's happening. It's absolutely mind-blowing stuff. But it's getting it across to the people. I mean, we talk to aliens every day. Can you believe that? They just come through and chat about their lifestyle and how they work and what they did when their Earth changed and so on. And that's quite something. But
I want to hear more about it. Yeah, carry on.
Tell you what people don't realize. People think that there's just sort of this Earth and the stars out there, etc. They don't realize how big the whole thing is. Now, if you just take the number of stars out there, you know what a light year is?
A light year,
yeah. In 1 second, light will go around the Earth 7 times. So imagine how far it's traveled in 8 billion years. It's a ludicrous amount of distance. Now, the only way you can sort of relate how the Earth fits into that is if you take one drop of water as being the Earth, and then you take the whole ocean. Every drop of water in the ocean is another planet.
Yeah.
Now, logically, is there life on other planets?
Absolutely.
Has to be, right? Yeah. So then you look at our planet. We've got things like fish, animal, insects, humans, all sorts of a whole variety of different things. I mean, literally millions of different things. But on different planets, they have different things as well, because the atmosphere is different, the elements are different, and sunshine and time and just all sorts of things. So suddenly you've got all these different beings. Now, what everybody assumes is all the people on the other planets are little green men or little blue men who look pretty much the same as us. That's not true. You don't have to be a human on 2 legs to have a brain. Lots of people have far more brains. They could be fish, dogs, animals, insects, anything. And if you think of the abilities that some of the things have, and look at a bat, for example, has sonar, so do dolphins. Snakes taste with their tongue. Dogs can hear sounds that we can't. There's more colors up there than there are here. There's all these different variations. And then you look at religion. Your main character here is Jesus. Do you have a Jesus on all these other planets? Or do you have different prophets? Now, that's how big the whole thing is. And now you look at who controls this lot. If you take, the simplest way to say it is, let's have God right at the top. It's a pyramid structure. So it's management structure. We're down here, we learn as we evolve, we go higher and higher, we work our way all the way up to the top. That's really what it is. But along the way, people have created angels and archangels and all these different prophets from the other side. And everything's got so out of whack. It's not straightforward anymore. There's been so many errors created that we don't really understand the truth anymore about what spiritualism is or how life works. And the problem is, many years ago, maybe you were given something which somebody told you which they believed 100%, so you pass it on to your kids believing it's correct. But meanwhile, it's just getting worse and worse and worse and so on. And that's what needs correcting. Your religions have gone from, there's now 600 religions. New ones pop up every day. Somebody gets a great idea, let's do this, call it a new name, and they've got a new religion. So you've got 600 religions, 900 prophets, and one creator. So that's how religions have gone astray. Now, spiritualism is exactly the same. And it was only in, I think, 1880 when the first seances were done, and people started to talk to the other side and so on. And as people have learned more, they've put labels on it, and they've created things. A simple example, spiritual healing. Let's call it Reiki. We put it in boxes and put labels on, etc. That's just a very simple example. And there's all these creations been made which all need correcting. Now, what's happening at the moment is the Earth is going through a major change. And the only way to get this change done effectively is to basically let the whole thing crash and start again. If that makes sense.
Yep.
So instead of trying to correct things now, which simply hasn't worked over the centuries, they're going to let things crash and then they can rebuild. So people can see the difference. And then they'll start to rebuild the right way. They'll get the right information. And we evolve all the time. The new kids coming down these days are much brighter than we were. Otherwise, we still be cavemen. So they come down with more brains, if you like, a little bit more experience, and the ability to do more. So we evolve all the time, and we grow, we make mistakes, we evolve, and we just carry on going. And we're at a stage now where over the next 10, 11 years, is going to be the major change. And if you see what's happening at the moment, 80% of the countries have some form of civil chaos. There's wars right, left, and center. Just take Gaza. What, 30,000 dead now in Gaza? But if you look across the water to Yemen, 200,000 dead. Walk up a bit, 600,000 dead. Nobody really cares. The war is, it's over there somewhere, doesn't bother us. It's only if it's in your backyard that you worry. So people aren't really concerned about helping with the planet. You take the climate change. Everybody says, we're going to sort something out. Nobody does anything. And nobody really understands climate change either. They just follow the media. Then you look at the media. What do? They just feed you a total load of bull to sell adverts. That's all they do. You go to Facebook today. How many scams do you see? Every other advert is a scam. You're in South Africa, right?
Yep.
How often have you seen adverts saying, Anton Rupert, invest 4,800. Elon Musk do the same thing. They're all scams. Yet Facebook keep running them. Why? They're making bucks. So this is how screwed up the world is. It just can't go on. So what it's going to do, it's literally going to crash. And then we've got to rebuild it from scratch.
Yeah.
How many people do you know that have gone insolvent, gone into liquidation in the last couple of years? Loads of people have run out of money. Loads of people have lost their loved ones. Loads of people have had all sorts of drama finishing off the choices they made before they came down to this, finishing off all the lessons, so that they can start again. It's a basic story.
Yeah.
You can see I'm passionate about it. I talk about this all the time.
So, okay, I've got a few questions.
Sure.
Could just go back a little bit. So you say you've been channeling for quite a while, you and your daughter. How did that start?
That started about 40 years ago. I was married to a clairvoyant. She died a couple of years ago. A very, very good clairvoyant as well. And we started spiritual stuff about 40, 45 years ago. And I was in England, and my mother is a medium. My father is an energy source. And I just started channeling. It was just, I could see so many things. It was kind of unreal. And I did it for 2-3 years, enough to create six books about understanding spiritual life. And then it stopped for a while. And when I sort of contacted them, you go to meditation, you talk to them and say, what's going on? They just say, oh, it's not time yet, No rush. Because time over there is totally different. A few more years go past, and then I do a bit more. Then I take a year off, and I start teaching people. Nothing happens. Nobody's interested in what I'm doing. So I say to them upstairs, what's going on? Ah, it's not time yet. Really, they've got a great sense of humor. Anyway, then it got closer and closer when my wife died a couple of years ago. Then she said, okay, it's going to be time to teach very shortly, but what you've got to do now is just link up with your daughter and we'll send you all the information and so on. And we started channeling, really serious stuff. Contacted some brilliant people. And as I was saying earlier, a lot of aliens, visitors, that they've evolved on different planets, different ways. And it's not like here. I mean, we have one group, for example, that just didn't have any emotion. Another group didn't have any love. Another one didn't have any negativity. They're creating all these different planets, different civilizations, and leaving out this or whatever to see what is the best thing they can do. And what people don't understand is over the other side, you've got a whole hierarchy of spiritual beings, which are basically just guys like you and me who've died, crossed over, and learned a bit more and progressed up the ladder. The more times you reincarnate, the more you learn, the more you can progress and so on. So somebody now has to basically create planets, if you like, create civilizations. And they do. They create a civilization with all these characteristics, and they say, right, let's see how that will evolve. We call them gardeners. So we have one gardener of the earth, for example. And they create all these different civilizations. And if you just take what's been on Earth, where Incas, the Mayans, the pyramids being built, all those sort of things, they were all created. Sumerians, Babylonians. And they can create them, and they can make them disappear if they want to. It's like, Jesus, this is not working. So in our garden, we'll just take out all the weeds. It didn't work, we'll start again. And that's really what they do. Over there, time is totally different. And over there, there's no physical. It's all just energy. So it's very easy to, once you know how to connect to them, to talk to them, you just got to understand how they work and so on. And on our website, we've now got over 2,000 channelings. And it's everything from a basic spiritual course to right at the top of the ladder. I mean, we can talk to 60 different civilizations at the moment. You want to know what happens when you die? Where you go, what you do, how you fit in, all sorts of things. That's all there. People just got to go and download it. And what Spirit is saying is, when the time's right, people will just go and download it. It's all there. So we're just sort of waiting.
Yeah, that's it.
But having fun while we're doing that.
So, okay, so you obviously know a lot about what's going on in the world, or there's some predictions. Some of it may happen and some may not. But I'm more interested actually in South Africa, because it's the first time I'm speaking to someone who is actually in the country. And I know there's a lot of this political stuff going on. And I like what you said about the leadership needing to come from within the Black community themselves. Do you see anything of that coming up?
Okay, what's going to happen in South Africa? We've written 2 articles about South Africa, how it's going to change, and the change has to come from the people. If you look at it logically, everybody knows that ASC are a bunch of crooks, they've stolen all the money, etc. Let me give you one just interesting fact about that, just a good story to tell. A lot of the Africans don't understand what a billion is. They know it's a big figure. So how we express it to them is, if you just count out round notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it'll take you 4 months to get to 1 million. It'll take you 30 years to get to 1 billion. But if you want to get to the amount that's gone missing since the ANC took over, you'd have had to have started 3,000 years before Christ. And that's a true figure. And that is scary. You know how much money that is? It's just a ludicrous amount of money. But anyway, what are the people doing about it? Nothing. You take the white population, we jump up and down, we shout and we scream and so on, and we get good guys coming along like Rob, what's his name, who say this is what you must do, etc. You've got the DA who are doing a little bit, but nobody is really doing anything new. The majority of your population are the Africans. Now, we know that the Africans have been kept uninformed. After 30 years, they're still not being properly educated and so on. And all they believe is the ANC is, they're a good guys sort of thing. And every year they sort of vote for them. This year, they're obviously going to lose. But they don't really do anything. If you look at the rest of Africa, you have a lot of coups. Nearly all your governments are corrupt. You have a coup, they go to the general in the army and they say, look, the government's screwing up again. Won't you guys take over and we'll have some proper democratic elections? And in a lot of cases, the army does that. And they have crooked elections and somebody else gets in and somebody else gets their bank account padded and off you go again. Now, what's going to happen in South Africa is pretty much the same thing. The people can't the poor can't be much poorer. I mean, they're really suffering at the moment. And the ANC, the government, they've got all the money, they've got the cars, the houses, and they're the other end of the scale from all of these poor people. All these poor people are just saying, well, they're not doing anything. But eventually it will get too much. Then they start to get together. And when they get together, you get this group energy. So you get everybody gossiping about the same thing, and that gets expanded. And the gossip gets worse and worse and worse, and that creates action. Then they will do, the way the Africans think, they'll probably go and just burn down Parliament or whatever. But what they should do is they go to the army, and they say, right, you've got to kick out the ANC because they're doing all this damage, and you'll have a coup. And that will burst the bubble, if you like. Things will settle down for a while, and that's when things can be corrected. So there's two ways to correct things. You either correct things now and make it better, or you make it worse till the ball bursts. And then people can see the difference. The difference between having a little bit of money and having nothing is having 2 meals a day instead of one. That is actually luxury to a lot of people. And that's what they will see. And that's when they start to create the right sort of lifestyle, where they start to look after each other. If everybody helped each other, it would work. Now, what's going to happen here in South Africa is you're going to get communities starting. So after this, after all this drama, and the ANC gets kicked out, and there's civil unrest and so on, you're going to have communities. And a community will be, let's just take a small area like, I don't know, Kopa, for an example. And you have a little village, and surrounding the village, you've got the farms, and the farms will create all the food. But instead of transporting it to a Checkers in Mhlanga and putting it in a supermarket and everybody marking it up, it'll be sold to the community, which are right next door. So the prices are going to be much more affordable. And then where you've got this community, you're going to need somebody else who's going to mend shoes, somebody who wants to make clothes. And the community starts to work within the community. And all this importing from China and exporting and so on, that will all stop. Because it makes sense to let's look after everybody here instead of let's not just get the big guys getting orders from overseas and making all the bucks, etc., and cutting us out of it. So these communities will start, and these communities will start to look after each other. Now, the Africans are actually very good at communities, and so are the whites once they understand it. At the moment, there is none of those real communities. You live in Gauteng, right? Yeah. In Gauteng, people haven't got time for the next door neighbors in general. You go to a little country village where everybody knows everybody, then they've got time for each other. The big cities, they're just interested in money, career, etc. Not too many people enjoy working in big cities. They'd rather get out to more comfortable places. So all that will change as well. When you start looking after people and helping each other, it's very gratifying, it's very satisfying, but also allows people to evolve and create and improve instead of just putting up with what they can afford. That makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the conclusion that I reach as well. I just think the way things are going now is the communities don't feel safe because there's so much violence and robbery and all of that going on that they're just living
Mm-hmm.
walled up here. I mean, we don't want to be speaking to the neighbor because you can't even see the neighbor.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very uncomfortable way to live. And if you look how it's got worse and worse over the years. I remember when I flew into South Africa, I moved here in 71 and flew British Airways. And as we were going to land in Joburg, the pilot said, yeah, there's a time difference here. Please wind your watches back 20 years. And it was pretty primitive. But since then, it's really gone downhill. We knew pretty much what would happen when we allowed the Africans to take over, because it's happened in all the other countries. And so you prepare for it, but it's going to happen because we live in an African country.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I think, as you say, everything will get worse before it will get better. And the movement has to start within. I used to think if I looked at Zimbabwe, a lot of people said, look at how they're suffering, but nobody did anything. And Robert Mugabe just
Mm.
stayed in power until the people themselves said, okay, let's go do something. It didn't come from
Yeah.
outside. There was no country that stepped in and said, let's help these people. But it's going to happen here too. And I don't know, I'm hearing stories about America putting stuff, um, what did I actually heard it this morning that they want the president to sign some sort of agreement. So I don't know. There's so much outside influence going on here. But the world, like you say, the world's going crazy.
Yeah, outside influence, that happens all the time. With politics, the politicians don't tell the people the truth because it would scare the hell out of them. So they just do what they think is best for the country. Now, as an example, and this is just hypothetical, America would say, right, we need a base in Africa because Russia is already financing several countries in Africa, and we're not there, so we need to be there to protect our side of the people. So let's put a base in South Africa, and we'll make a deal with them. And that's what they've done around the world, just so that there is some opposition to Russia.
Yeah.
But all those things you sort of never hear about.
Of course not.
Hmm.
Because that wouldn't serve it would serve them. So they wouldn't want to share that information. So what would you suggest that people do? I mean, just like, let's start with South Africa as a start. How would somebody get through the next 10 years?
Okay. First, there's a couple of things. First of all, live in truth. Second thing is live for the now. Now, nobody lives in truth. Everybody portrays himself as the way they want to be seen. It's not reality. If you lived in truth, everything you'd say would be just very straightforward. You wouldn't have to lie. You wouldn't have to think whatever. But people don't. I mean, the media is just terrible. But you just take ordinary salespeople. You're on the phone, they try and sell you something, they sell you a load of bull. How many times have you been scammed in the last year or so? Happens all the time. So that's the first thing, live in truth. The second thing is live for the now. What everybody is doing is saying, well, I've got to have a career, I've got to make big bucks, I need to buy a bigger car, etc. Live for today. Enjoy today. Enjoy the people around you. Enjoy the meals with the family. Everybody spends all their time just concentrating on making money for the future. They don't worry about today. Now, I live in, just to give an example, I live in Hillcrest. We used to live in Durban, and we came up here, and we found that everybody was very friendly. You walk in, you say good morning, and they say good morning back. Whereas in Durban, they just didn't do that. And it is a very friendly community. And everybody sort of helps everybody else. And since we've been here, we've needed to do this, that, and the other. And somebody just phones up and says, oh, you can do this, 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 and this is where you go, and this is how you do it. Good friendly people. And you've got sort of a community, a much better community spirit up here than you have down in Durban. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to take time out for other people. I mean, think about how often do you think about your friends and think, oh, you just phone them and catch up, or phone them and gossip. Women do it far more than men. Men hardly do it at all. But you've got to understand other people. Look at what problems they're having, not just what problems you've got. Because you can help other people. You have abilities which you've learned specific things. You've got kids, I take it? You have kids?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So you're very good at sensing. When your kids were asleep, but they were sick, you could sense it. You could sense all sorts of things with your kids. So you can help other kids growing up. That's just a very simple example. The more you experience, the more you can help others. The other thing I would suggest people do is just go to our website and just, on the front page there's a book, it says Understanding Your Life. Free, download it. And it just explains how the world works and what is the best thing to do and how to go about it. People don't understand what happens when you die, where pets go when you die, energies, nature, all this sort of thing. They simply don't understand it. If you did, you'd see the world a completely different way. So,
Yeah. It's all about perception.
That's your best starting point. But two things: live in truth, live in the now. Most important. If we all did that, you wouldn't have any problems.
No, it's true. It's true. Because I think, especially like you say up here, is people are all in it for themselves. And I don't know about Hillcrest or even the rest of the country, but I see here, even in the shops, everybody's just, it's like they hate being there, they hate being of service. There's almost like a culture of people saying, I don't want to be here and I don't have to serve you. They'll watch you, they'll just stand around, have a chat to their colleagues. And it's like ingrained to say the less I do, the better I look to my colleagues. And like that's something that's got to shift because, how do you foster a community that cares and shares with everybody when everybody says I'm going to do as little as possible and I'm going to work as little hours as possible and I'm going to complain about my boss.
They do all the time, texting on their phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, if you take just cell phones, everywhere you look, people on their phones. The new generation on their phones, they're much better than we are on their phones, but they're spending way too much time on the phones and not communicating with people. I mean, if they want to chat to somebody in the room next door, they don't go and chat to them. They send them a text. They're only next door. So all this interaction, this social interaction, is sort of going out the window. I mean, I've got a 14-year-old grandson. He spent 4 years every night just playing computer games. No social interaction outside of that. 4 years of his life just playing computer games. But that's the way they are. And there's thousands of others doing exactly the same thing. In the future, one of the things in the future is we're going to be a little bit smaller. And the reason for that is very simple. There's no more farming, agriculture, etc., digging ditches and plowing fields. We have a tractor. Everything's automated. So we don't need to do so much physical work, so our stature actually gets smaller and smaller. Interesting. I did one of the things you must look at is we've got predictions for this year, and there's 40 different predictions. It's also on the website. It's free, go through it. But we got all these from the other side, and they're telling us all these different things about it, because they tell us how religion's going to change countries, finance, all this sort of thing. And things like, you're going to get smaller in the future. All those are there. And transport, magnetic transport. Whether you've got two magnets, one above the other, and so you get hyperspeeds, like Musk's Hyperloop and so on. That's going to be a way of the future. And all sorts of amazing stuff in there. That's just very interesting to read.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
So, what do they say about the
One more
finance?
thing as well. One more thing as well, that is nature. This
Yeah,
is something people haven't realized. You know what nature spirits are?
yeah.
You do. Okay.
But you could share.
We
Maybe
were,
some of our viewers don't know, but you could share.
uh, nature spirits are basically, you've got two things. You've got nature and you've got spiritual humans, if you like. We work in one dimension, nature works in the other. So nature have their own little spirits. They're called evas or nature spirits. They're tiny little things that look after all the plants, flowers, etc. The same as our spirits look after us, these nature spirits look after nature. And that is fascinating to go and, we can go into meditation, we go into nature, and we can start talking to these as a group of nature spirits. They tell us what they're doing, how they're going to do it, and how they can change the garden, and all sorts of things. This is what I'm saying. The stuff that we're getting is so far out. Most people can't believe it yet. We've got to learn all this stuff below. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you. You can tell you a bit more about what? Finance?
Finance, what's going to happen with the finances? Because I know the whole system's going to collapse, but what will happen then? I mean, are we going crypto or
Go
bartering?
crypto for a while, and that will fall apart. Yeah, the reason that finance is so bad is because people don't really understand how banks work. I'll tell you very basically, if you want to print some money, let's say the government needs another R1 billion, they set up a bond, and that bond is immediately bought by, I don't know, a pension fund or a Japanese investment company or whatever. It's guaranteed by the government, and it pays very small, 2, 3, 4%, whatever it is. The worse state the country's in, the bigger the percentage. So that's your bond. So that gives you the right to print R1 billion. But then you give it to the banks, and you say to the banks, you can lend 10 million, 10 billion. We'll give you one, but you can actually lend 10. So all they're doing is they're lending paper money backwards and forwards. So think about this. They lend you 100,000 to buy a car, you don't pay it. So what have they lost? They lost a bit of paper, nothing else. And interest. What creates financial success is circulation of money. I make R100, so I buy something from you for R100. You buy something else for R100. They buy something. And so this money circulates. Everybody's getting a little bit of the action. Now, take R100 out of the system, suddenly all that disappears. So what the ANC have been doing, for example, is stealing all this money, or it goes missing, is they're taking it out of the system. So suddenly your economy is getting weaker and weaker and weaker. It could be getting stronger. So what's going to happen with money? Basically, this country is going to fall apart, as far as money goes. They're licensing all sorts of cryptocurrencies, but you'll never get another Bitcoin. It does work when people understand it, and Ecopo, they have their own currency already, only for use in the Ecopo, which makes a lot of sense, keeps all the money in the country, in the community, and there's no banks charging these excessive fees, etc. So that will work. So you have lots of communities will have their own, but more than that, you're going to get bartering. If you think, what would you like to make your life perfect? It's not going to be the latest BMW, 10-bedroom house. It's peace of mind every day. If I could guarantee you that every day for the rest of your life, you'd have enough money to buy food, entertainment, travel, everything you needed, plus a little bit extra. You'd be over the moon, totally happy. You don't need a few million extra. What do you do with a few million extra? Put it in the bank, you save it. So that's the stage we've got to get to. So where you get local communities, imagine if you're in a village, you've got your house built and so on. Your house is now going to cost a hell of a lot less than it does normally. You buy all your groceries locally. You do a little bit of work, whatever you do. You make something, or you help out, or you work somehow, and you swap and you barter and you trade, and you work 2-3 hours a day, and the rest of the time you socialize, you have fun, you talk to people, you enjoy life. What we're doing today is we're working 10 hours a day so we can come home and watch television for 3 or 4 hours. That's not
Yeah.
easy.
Mine and bad news
Yeah.
and advertising.
Oh,
So you were saying about the nature spirits. So what are they saying about nature? Because nature's under threat, in my opinion. But it could just mean also it's part of the change and part of earth cleansing.
nature is the foundation of life. Nature is here to ensure that life can continue. Nature looks after itself. It has so many built-in systems. No matter what happens to the earth, no matter what we do, nature will always sort itself out. And you can see where there's animals going extinct all the time. Animals and plants go extinct at the rate of over 100 a day. But then we don't need dinosaurs anymore. That's a good thing they went extinct. Same as with the things that are going extinct now. We evolve, and so the plants and animals evolve as well. Where you get, let's say, plants growing in your garden right now, if the climate dropped on average 20 degrees, which is huge, your plants would change. You get different plants. They become hardy. They become stronger. They look after themselves. So nature is your foundation for everything, and that keeps us in the right place. And what nature does as well is it looks after, I'm trying to give you a simple example, negativity. If you and I are arguing, it creates a negative energy. That negative energy has to be used up. So what happens to it? Basically, I'll simplify it. It drifts around, it links up with other forms of negative energy, it gets into rivers, it goes down rivers, into the sea, where it dissipates, and it goes up, becomes rain, comes in, comes down again. So that's how negativity is removed. And if you look at any places where there's, like at the moment, there's more wars everywhere, but there's more climate change everywhere. That's exactly what's causing it. If everybody loved one another on one single day, you'd have perfect weather. So that's just how that works. You've got energy, which you need energy for animals, energy for insects, energy for plants, growth, etc. They're all different forms of energy. Your air circulates in a certain way. Your oceans go in currents to take different nutrients to different places on the planet. You've got volcanoes, for example, which are like boils, if you like, gets rid of negative energy. So we know how nature works, and many of them are looked after by these little divas. And divas will see that if this field over here has been had drought, needs water, they will help the plants one way or another. Or they will change things over here. And divas work as a group mind. They understand exactly what's needed, and they just all work together. Very simple.
Yeah,
and one of the nicest things about nature is, you've heard of this thing, if you're sick, you go out into the country and spend a weekend in the country to get better. What that is imagine going right now to a field where you've got a little stream, nice sunshine, put up a deck chair next to the stream, and it's just so peaceful, so relaxing. That's the energy that's created there. So nature creates energy. And we abuse that nature. We create steel and concrete structures which have very bad energy. And you can now tell the difference when you drive out of Johannesburg and you go to the country, go to Veldstrom or whatever. There's Drakensberg, very good energy up in the mountains. So you've got different energies going backwards and forwards. Divas help with those as well.
Yeah.
Animals,
the
way they cross over, the way they grow, the way they evolve. That's fascinating. But nature will always look after itself. You can't screw up nature too much.
I've noticed a couple of years ago, if you drive at night or you drive long distance, you'd have to wash your windscreen with all the bugs. And I haven't needed to do that for a couple of years now. There's been no bugs on my headlights. There's been no bugs on my windscreen, and that's very sad to me.
Yeah, there's far more becoming extinct. I'd tell you one of the worst things as well. That's something which has to be rectified. If you just take the food that we eat, it is so bad for us. It's so full of all sorts of crap.
Yeah.
And if you take fertilizer, this Montano, the main fertilizer company,
Monsanto.
they produce a fertilizer. What's
Monsanto.
the name of it?
Monsanto.
Yeah, they've just been bought by Bayer Industries, big pharma, all part of a big conglomeration. Now, what they're doing is you've got to have this fertilizer to grow the plants. But what they're doing now is what they've added in is when the plants regrow for the first time, they produce spores that go around closing down all the other plants that can only be resurrected if they use more fertilizer. How evil is that?
Yeah.
Now, in India, already, farmers are crashing right, left, and center. I mean, by the thousands. They just can't keep up. Their crops are disappearing. They've got to buy more fertilizer. It's just control. They are saying we need to make more money. This is how we control it. Very simple. Now, I'll give you an example. I've got a product developed by a guy in Free State. And it's very simple. It's a plant nutrition spray. You spray it on the plants, and they grow twice as big, twice as fast. Now, also, you use 80% less fertilizer. It also helps to sort out the nutrition below. But do you think you can get it out to the public? The public look at it and say, oh yeah, we've heard of this before. Nobody tests it. Now, that's a true story. Other things, you've got cannabis plants. You know, Chernobyl? If you planted cannabis around there, the cannabis plants will draw in all the nuclear waste, if you like, and the plant dies, that waste disappears. That's how strong cannabis is. Cannabis used to be used up until 1930 as the main medicine. You know how it got banned?
Of course.
I'll tell you. You do. I'll tell you briefly. Two guys, Rockefeller and Carnegie. They funded all the American universities to research natural medication so that they could make it synthetically and therefore get royalties. Then they took over the licensing of doctors. They were the only people who could license doctors. So they built into the Hippocratic Oath that thou shalt not supply anything natural, only pharmaceuticals. And that's why we're in such a bad state now. Big pharmaceuticals literally taken over our bodies. Now, your body has a cannabis or cannabinoidal system. Your body produces more THC than is legally allowed. Now, why our health is getting worse. I mean, 20 years ago, your chance of getting cancer was 1 in 20. Today it's 1 in 2. And it's simply going to get worse. Vaccines are going to make it worse as well. But this is a reason. Western medication is designed to keep you on Western medication. When you're born, nobody has to teach you how to eat, sleep, drink, etc. That's the cannabinoidal system. Then it starts to learn. So let's say you get your first headache, your mom gives you an aspirin, your body's just learned that aspirins cure headaches. Next time you get a headache, it's going to want an aspirin. It's not going to allow your body to heal it naturally. So once you get to about 45, 50, most of your body has been hijacked by Western medication, keeping you on Western medication. That's a very simple solution. You detox the body, you feed it more medicinal cannabis, and it suddenly wakes up and says, oh, I can fix this, I can fix this, I can fix this. And it starts to fix things. It starts to fix the body. It's that simple. Why isn't it out there in the marketplace every day? We're struggling to get it out there. All money.
When people stop buying maybe non-organic food or stop buying this or stop listening to the doctors and start listening to their own bodies and taking ownership, the doctors wouldn't have a say. And I'm not saying doctors are needed. You know, I believe that they're good for when you cut yourself and they need to stitch you up.
Yeah.
But not to give me medication to fix a symptom, you know?
You're quite right. Quite right. I mean, so much can be healed naturally. But the big mistake doctors make is you get the medical reps coming around saying this drug is the best thing since sliced bread, but they don't go and check the data. And the data is often pure bullshit. If you look at, you Google now how many major big pharmaceutical companies have been fined, 3 billion, 4 billion, 6 billion Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, for exaggerating claims. But all they do is they pay the fine. They made 20 million, they pay a 3 million fine, and they carry on going. They change the name. On some of the products, the FDA said, well, it's pretty bad. A lot of people are dying, so you're going to have to put may cause death on the label. Then it's okay. You can go and sell some more. It's all money connected. Their industries control our work. Huge bucks. And have you heard of BlackRock?
So again?
Have you heard of BlackRock?
Of?
BlackRock. Two companies, two financial companies, own a share of just about every major company in the world. $7 to $8 trillion assets they've got. And they just control things. So whatever is needed, they control all the media houses, companies, Apple, Facebook, all these sort of companies. They have control. So they can change whatever narrative they want. That's scary.
Well, I think I work with narcissistic abuse victims, and what I learned over the years is a narcissist will tell you whatever they need to tell you to get their needs met, and it's all about short-term gain and to hell with the consequences. But the person who's a victim of that actually starts realizing, hang on, I do have power. I just can't give my power to somebody who's going to abuse it. So it's not about trying to change the other person. It's about saying, I no longer want to give my power away. And I think people need to wake up, because that's what's happening. That's what's happening in the government. That's what's happening in the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, it's everywhere. If people stop saying they need to change, they need to start becoming honest and stop being corrupt. You know, and I mean, like you talk about the Rockefeller Foundation, that was more than 100 years ago that they already put that into play. And now people are only waking up because, like being in a narcissistic relationship, you're being duped. You think they've got honesty and integrity and they're wearing this mask and they're telling you it's for your own good. And then when you start waking up, there's all these responses, you know. And at the end of the day, it's actually just a case of walking away and saying, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. And the thing is, it's now everywhere, because you can get fined. We're being listened in on our phones. We're being listened in. I mean, if YouTube didn't like this video, they could take it off for whatever reason.
Yep.
So much for fair play.
I look at COVID. Now, there's been so many, you can Google things on COVID. There's been so many people, you know, eminent doctors standing in front of Parliament or in front of the European Commission saying, these are the facts. We have proven that it's wrong and so on. They proved it wrong thousands of times. Nothing ever happens. It's simply, like you say, taken off the air.
Yeah. They get fired. They get
at the moment being
shaped
sued for helping people with COVID. And he was quite right. But that's the media and that's Big Pharma.
Wasn't Dr. Shankara Chetty, wasn't he on trial last week, on the weekend? The Neo trial.
Yeah. Shocking that it should get to that stage.
Well, as you said, I mean, things need to get either so bad that people wake up and say, again, with a toxic relationship, I often say to my clients, what is it that made you leave? There's some line that has to be crossed. It's like they will wait until the worst thing that could happen happens, and then they'll say, okay, now I need to do something about it. Keep giving you a chance, giving you a chance, giving you a chance, until eventually you realize it's not going to help you. You're actually just going to drown with that other person. They're going to take you down with them. So here's a question. You obviously know Dolores Cannon.
Yeah.
She said the world's splitting. So we're going into 5 dimension. Do you see something like that happen? Or is that, because I haven't heard anyone else talk about that the world is shifting and there will be 2 Earths?
Oh, well, yes and no. When we talk to the other side, if you died right now, you'd go into 5D. That's the other side. We're in 3D at the moment. So you go into 5D. So when we channel, for example, we go into 5D and people channel through us and so on. So what's happening over the next 2 generations, the change that's happening, the Earth has gone down, we hit rock bottom, now it's starting to go up again. The next 10, 11 years, it'll be going up and then it'll continue from there, it'll get better and better. And what will happen is the kids coming down now are far more, they have higher brain power, higher IQs, more knowledge. So to take us through this next stage of evolution. And more people are going to be able to chat to the other side. So eventually half the people are going to be the other side, half the people will be here. And then as you evolve, you don't need to be here anymore because all that information is over there. If I can just explain one thing about the other side, how we gather information. Do you know what your higher self is?
Yeah.
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 So the real you is over there, and they've sent down a little piece of their soul, if you like, to Earth, and that's you to learn these lessons to go back up there. It's probably sent other bits and pieces of you to different planets or whatever to learn different information. So it's gathering more and more information. And eventually it's going to have all the information that it can get from evolving on Earth. So eventually you cross over there and you start working different ways with memory and lots of different bits and pieces. So that's how it's splitting. You can have half 3D here, half 5D, and eventually everybody will cross over to 5D. And then you carry on upwards from there. And if I could just add one more thing to that, if you take new souls being born now, they don't have to go through this rigmarole of becoming this, and this, and eventually working their way up the chain, because we don't have all that information. There's no point in starting again as a caveman. You can start again as, in a different century or whatever. And that's why planets are created. So you can try out different things, different planets, different civilizations, different methods.
So that veil of forgetfulness is what's going to go.
The what?
When you're born, you have a veil of forgetfulness. So you don't remember anything and you have to literally start from scratch. So you would have access at all times. So you wouldn't drop so low that you wouldn't know.
Yeah, you would have on 5D. You've got all your memories on 5D. What happens when you come down for life is you look ahead in the Akashic records. Let's say you want to experience being married to a narcissist, having twins, dying of cancer. You look ahead in the Akashic records and you find where that's going to happen. So then it becomes a bit like a Mario CD. Put the CD in, it's got a million different possibilities. So that's your life. Once you get down there, you get born to that particular person, then you get total free will. Then you go through life, and then you take all that information back upstairs. But coming down to that life, what you want, you chose to learn, what did I say, having twins, dying of cancer or something. So what you'll do is you have several bodies, memories, emotional, physical, spiritual, and so on. So what you do is you need a little bit of those memories to bring down because you've already done that. There's no point in doing that again. So your starting point can be a little bit different. So you'll have access to certain memories, or more often than not, you'll have access to those memories later in life as you start to learn more. It would just seem so logical to go this way because, you've done it before somehow. Deja vu feeling, that sort of thing. So that's how you bring certain memories. Once you've got all the information, you're on the other side, you've got your higher self up here, but you don't immediately cross over and go back to your higher self. You cross over, you evaluate what you've done, you fill in any gaps. You might not decide to choose that life again. You might choose to experience a life that somebody else has had, which was similar, just to fill in any gaps for it. And you can do that in 2 minutes. And once you've understood all of that and that life is finished, then you link up to the higher self. And you say, right, now what are we going to do next? And then progress from there.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like when you've played all your games and you've now won all the levels and you've experienced it all.
Yeah.
So let me go find another game to play.
And there are some brilliant games as well. I'll just tell you a couple. I had a friend who died many years ago. He was a painter. Now, once you get to the other side, you've got thought is creation. You can just think of something, and that's how it works. Okay? So a fisherman would always catch the biggest marlin. A golfer would always get a hole in one. It can get quite boring. Anyway, I tuned into him a couple of years after he died, and he was sitting in Mahaliesberg, and he was painting. So I said, why are you painting, Gerald? You can create the Mona Lisa if you want to. He says, no, I'm painting with emotion. Never done that before. not with paint and color, painting with emotion. That is something we haven't experienced yet. On the other side, there are colors which I can't explain to you because there's nothing for it to relate to. It's like trying to tell a blind person what a color is. Got no concept of it. There are sounds which you've never heard before. Musical instruments here are good. Over there, unbelievable. You can hold a conversation with 10, 20, 30 people at once on all sorts of things. Time is different. Speed is different. You can go to different planets, galaxies, dimensions, all sorts of things. When my wife died a couple of years ago, she was a very good medium. I'll just tell you the story. We've got time?
Yeah.
Okay, she was dying of heart failure. So we take her to the hospital for the last time, and she's on her last legs. We know she's got to go. And a couple of days later, the hospital phone says, come in, say your goodbyes, etc. And we went in, and she was half conscious, and we said our goodbyes, and it was all very tearful. And we went home just waiting for that call from the hospital. Nothing happened. But then her friends started to phone in saying, I'm sure Verna came to visit me last night. In my dreams or whatever, I'm sure she was there. And 400 people did this.
Wow.
And what she'd done is she'd gone around and she'd visited all these people and just put together a little energy packet of, so they wouldn't feel any grief or whatever. And then a few days later, the hospital phones and says, I don't know what's happened to your wife, but she's now having breakfast with some of the other patients. Anyway, a few days later, we get called in, we go in again, we go through the same ritual, and she dies. But sorry, just before that. So before we go the second time, we go into meditation, and there's Verna. Now, she's lying in a hospital bed, and she's channeling through us. And she's like an excited puppy. She's saying, you can't believe what it's like over here. We do this, that, and the other. She was already playing around in 5D, having an absolute blast. And that's just one of the nicest stories. Now, when we do meditation or readings or whatever, quite often she'll come through and she'll just start chatting away. That's very nice. You can still keep in touch.
Well, being a medium, she'll know exactly what to expect going on the other side.
Absolutely.
Now you can communicate that way. I know that a lot of people that have had like a near death, they're not scared of dying anymore because you know what to expect. So what about people that actually go to hell? Is that like self-created hell?
Hell is a fear-based mythology, and where it comes from, it was created by the Catholic Church. Funny enough, it's translated from the word Gehenna, Gehenna. Gehenna. And Gehenna is a rubbish dump outside of Jerusalem that continually burns. People put their rubbish there. And if anybody is executed for a crime, they're thrown into this fiery pit to burn for the rest of their life. So the church picks this up and says, you do anything wrong, you're going to be thrown in this fiery pit. That's where it comes from.
Okay.
I'll ask you another question. What is the opposite of God? There's an opposite to everything. Black, white, big, short, tall. What's the opposite of God?
Wouldn't it not be fear?
No. It could stun me for a long time. And eventually I said, what is the opposite? And all he said was, nothing. I'm everything. The opposite is nothing. That makes sense.
Yeah.
You just never stop learning new stuff all the time.
No, that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, too true.
So how do you tell us a little bit more about your website? So you say you've got quite a few people that do channeling and stuff like that. I see it's a membership site. So what would they have access to if they join?
The idea of the site is, we started to create a long time ago. It's for people who are ready to learn. Once you're ready to learn, you can go there. It costs you $5 a month. That's all. What's that, 90 Rand?
Yeah.
And then you've got access to everything. From right in the beginning, how the whole thing works. You've got the books. We've got audios to teach you meditation, taking you into it, etc. But then the big thing is you've got this spiritual library. And most of them are articles. The last 9 months has just been audios. So you can actually listen to either me or Sharon or somebody, talking to various parties from the other side, saying, this is what's going to happen to the Earth, and this is what's going to happen in the wars, and explaining everything, how it's all going to work. And of course, the fun part of the aliens, because when an alien talks through you, what they do is that they're all energy. So I'd feel them wanting to come and talk to me. I'd say, yes, you can sort of climb into my physical and we can chat. And they will come in and they will immediately look at my understanding. They won't tell me things which I'm not allowed to hear, about the future or whatever it is. They only know the words that I use, so they will use those words. And then when they talk, they use their hands a lot and all sorts of things. So when they first come in, it takes them a couple of minutes to get in, and they're probably not used to talking because they use instant understanding, or where they come from. So now they've got to get used to a voice box. And sometimes it comes through and they just laugh and they say, yeah, we've got all these appendages. What do we do with them? They've got a great sense of humor because the IQ is so much more advanced. And I remember one guy came through and he said, I just love this thing you have on Earth where you laugh and your bellies go up and down. That is very amusing. They've got a tremendous sense of humor. They really have. Anyway, so they come in and they chat away. And what's great is when they're channeling through me, I'm listening to me talking, but I'm getting a full understanding of what they know. And that you can't pass that along.
Yeah.
It's like if you had to describe for me for 6 months what life was like for you at school, I'd get a pretty good idea. But all that information is in one pinprick in your brain. Transfer that to me, I understand the whole thing. That's what instant understanding is. So when we do meditation, we tune into whoever wants to chat. Then we get this instant understanding. So I understand and I start to describe, and then they just take over and they chat away. But also, what's different is the channeling in the old days, 100 years ago, when you were channeling, it was you'd sit around a table and it would all be very serious and somber, and then somebody would say, greetings from beyond the veil, because that's what they expected. And that's been carried on. And a lot of people do that today. But when we chat to them now, it's exactly the same as me chatting to you, because that's where we talk these days. We're not 100 years ago. We're not Victorian. So that's something else which people are getting used to. I mean, you go to somebody who channels still in this old-fashioned way. Or another example is, first time I channeled a German soldier, I would start to talk like this because that's how I thought they talked. Nonsense. They talk English. So these are all things you learn as you go on. But it's fascinating. It really is. We got some brilliant people coming to chat. And also, we've chatted to a lot of influential people. Gandhi was one, Hitler, Ayatollah Khomeini. And to get their past, their take on things, and what they were doing in their days and how they saw things. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure. Do you teach that as well on the website? How do you do that?
Yeah, you really need one-on-one to do channeling. We've taught a lot of people channeling, but you normally have a meditation circle, and we teach them to meditate, then we take them to introduce them to their guides, and then we take them to the next step so they can see different dimensions, different levels. And then they start to channel. We start to teach them to channel. And then they just carry on from there. Once you've done it, then it's easy to carry on.
Well, I suppose it's with anything, right?
Yeah.
Once you know how to drive, you can drive. So where would they find you? Where would people get hold of you?
It's just spiritualdictionary.com. Everything is there. On the homepage, what we've done is we've put 40 different categories. And then we've listed all the articles in those categories. So people can look at the site and see everything we've got. But they've got to obviously pay to listen to it. So then they just join. Like I said, $5 a month. But then they get all the updates every day. And we've got a Facebook page as well, which you'll see on there. And we've got over 1,000 followers. We've had 290,000 visitors, I think, so far. And books you can download free, there are all sorts of things. So all they've got to remember is spiritualdictionary.com, and they carry on from there.
Yeah. Awesome. So do you have a message for our viewers before we finish?
I just got to reiterate the same thing. Two things. Live in truth, live for the now. Enjoy it every day. Now is what counts. Don't worry about it. If you've got to pay the rent at the end of the month, for example, and you haven't got the money, there's no point in worrying about it now. You just get grey hair. So you wait till you have to. If you look back on all the dramas you've had, they all sorted themselves out eventually. We spend too much time worrying and stressing about things. All you do is you look at the outcomes. If I haven't got the money for rent, either that's going to happen or that's going to happen. Very simple. Then you don't have to worry about it anymore. So enjoy every day. Live for the day. It'll make a huge difference to your life.
Love that.
Thank
Thank you, Geoff. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed listening to you and hearing your story. I will post all your links below so people can get hold of you if they need to. And you have an awesome day.
Thanks. You too.